Hi, my name is Rachel Streelman, and I'm very excited to be here with you today. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend on your e-retreat with Inheritance of Hope. Inheritance of Hope is an organization that's very near and dear to my heart. I've had the honor of getting to attend some retreats over the past few years, and I've gotten to meet so many wonderful families and volunteers and leaders. My role on those retreats was to be one of the photographers. So I got to capture family photos and capture the events of the weekend to be gifted to the families after the weekend was over, to be had as a keepsake. Photography is definitely a passion of mine. The Lord led me to photography just over 10 years ago when I had my first daughter. She's now 11, but I just wanted to capture my own memories of her and be able to capture them well. So I took a few classes when she was a baby and had no idea that the Lord would be leading me into a career of full-time photography. So fast forward now 10 years, and I have a business that I run with my sister out of Southern California, and we capture portraits anywhere from newborns all the way through weddings, and we love it all. So my hope for you today is that you'll be able to walk away with a few tips and tricks to be able to capture your own family photos and your own memories. I really believe that photography and capturing videos is such a gift. It just allows us to freeze a moment in time and to relive it over and over again. So let's get started. So since photography is my full-time job, I obviously shoot my professional images on my big fancy DSLR camera. Some of you might have a fancy DSLR camera as well at home, or just a point-and-shoot camera. But I'm here to tell you, you don't need the big fancy camera to capture beautiful images. So if you don't have one of those, don't fret. You can capture beautiful moments and memories using just your cell phone. So my hope today is that the tips and tricks I give you will apply across the board. You can apply them to how you take photos with your fancy camera or with just your cell phone. Believe it or not, even though this is what I do for a living, more often than not, I am taking memories, capturing videos and photos of my own kids and my own family on my cell phone. Technology is so advanced nowadays that we actually can really create and capture beautiful memories just using these guys. I thought I would start with just the very basics and using the camera that most of us have, and that is our cell phones. So some of this might seem boring and obvious, but I'm just going to cover all the bases anyway. So before you use your iPhone or cell phone cameras, an obvious thing, make sure your lens is clean. So you can use the back of your clothes. You can use one of those soft cloths, but making sure your lens is clean makes a huge difference in your images. Also, your camera does have the capability of zooming in and out. Don't use this feature unless absolutely necessary. Whenever possible, physically move closer to your subject. The reason for that is because when you zoom in, it automatically crops your image and it reduces the resolution, so you're unable to print it as large as you would be able to if you took it with the full frame without zooming in. Another little tip, at all costs, try to avoid using the selfie side of the camera. Use the rear-facing camera. And the reason for that, once again, is because they're higher quality images. The camera facing you is not nearly as high quality. You'll get much sharper and cleaner images by using this side. Try to not use your flash whenever possible. Natural light always makes for better quality images. Flashes tend to kind of blow out your subjects. What that means is it takes the color away from your subjects, and it makes them really bright and white. It also gives red eye when you're taking photos of people. So whenever possible, use a different light source. So if you're inside the house and it's dark and you think you need to use flash, you can actually resort to ambient light. So using, the lights inside your house or bringing a lamp closer to your subject just to avoid having to use the flash. I know sometimes that you find yourself in circumstances where you have no other choice, but whenever possible, try to keep that flash off. you can edit your cell phone images. You can do this obviously just within the camera itself. There's some basic editing tools, brightness, contrast, saturation, things like that. You can kind of play around and find the look that you like. However, there are also some third-party editing tools that you can download. My go-to favorite is Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom. You can find that in the App Store, and you can pay either a small monthly fee or there's a free version as well that does pretty good. And it just adds that extra bit of professionalism to your cell phone images. Few additional tips to make the most of your cell phone images involves your settings. So your camera automatically defaults to just the basic resolution. However, you can improve that by switching it over to the HDR resolution. And what that actually does is it takes 3 images at once. And it's to give a more balanced light in your images and to add a little bit more contrast just for a sharper image. Obviously, because it's taking 3 photos at once, it takes up a lot more space on your phone. So if you are not planning on printing these images, then I would suggest turning HDR off and going back to basics. But if it's maybe taking a family photo because you're someplace cool or by the Christmas tree, something that you'll want to preserve and print and you want high quality, go ahead and switch to HDR. To do that, you'll go to your settings, go to camera, and go to HDR to enable it. In addition to improving the quality of your still photos, you can improve the quality of your video. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to take videos and to take photos. You'll never regret having those memories captured. So a way to improve the quality of your video is to change your settings to make it 4K. 4K is the highest quality video that your cell phone is able to take. And when you're preserving video especially, you want that higher quality, but again, it takes up a lot of space on your phone. So just be sure to export your videos and your images onto your computer or onto your iCloud or an external hard drive so that it doesn't consume all the space on your phone. Nothing more frustrating than going to take a photo and finding out that your storage is full. So in order to put your video on 4K, you go to settings, go to camera, record video, and that's where you can switch that over. All right, now that we're all experts on how to get the best quality images and video out of our phones, what we're going to talk about next is how to use light. Having good light on your subjects is a key ingredient to having a beautiful image. I use natural light 99.9% of the time in my professional photography. Again, like I had shared earlier, I only use flash when absolutely necessary. So I want to teach you how to use natural light well indoors as well as outdoors. I'm actually sitting in my own natural light photography studio, which involves a big door to my right here that's covered in windows, and that's to allow a room full of natural light. What I can show you really quickly that you can probably see on my face, the more I turn towards that light, the more my face is illuminated by that natural light window. And when I turn this way, you can see my face get darker and darker because I'm not facing that natural light source. So that applies to the images you're taking at home. If you want a picture of your kids because they're dressed up for some special dress-up day at school or whatever the picture may be for, face your subjects towards that natural light source. You can see the light in their eyes. I don't know if you can see the light source in my eye. That little speck of light is coming from the window. So you'll have that same thing in your subject, and that's how you'll know they're well lit. It will make for a much more beautiful, bright, and contrasted image. Just the simple rule of facing them towards the light source instead of away. How do we use natural light outside. Very, very different. So our light source outside is obviously the sun. And if you face your subject towards the sun and say smile, what you're gonna get is a whole bunch of squinty eyes and, I can't really open my eyes, it's so bright. So we don't advise facing the sun. Sometimes, again, that's your only option. However, there is an alternative, and that is if the sun is out, your natural light source, what you can do is turn them sideways to the sun. So you will get, a bit of shadow on one side of the face, but it adds that nice depth of light to your image. You can also backlight. Unfortunately, cell phones don't do as well with this as cameras do, big fancy cameras, but we use backlight in our images, probably 75% of the time. It's actually my preferred look. You'll find your preferred look, whether you like really sharp and deep colors or whether you like the light and soft. I tend towards the light and soft versus the dramatic colors. But when you backlight, you get this halo. So I'll go ahead and throw up an example of that halo so you can see that. But if you see the light around my subject's heads, I call that halo lighting. I don't actually know what the technical fancy term is, but since the light source is behind them, it's illuminating them. I'll show you a side-by-side here of a backlit image versus a side-lit image. Side-lit, there's definitely more contrast, more vibrant colors than to backlit. So that is another option. And then facing the sun, is not a huge deal if your subject isn't looking directly at you. So if you're capturing a moment or you're capturing sports where they're not going to be trying to smile at you and have those squinty eyes, then having a fully lit photo by the sun is not a problem at all. It's really only when you're taking portraits and you're asking people to say cheese. Another option for outdoor photography and using natural light well is shooting into deeper shade. But when shooting into deeper shade, what that really means is your subject is standing on the edge, the lightest part of the shade. So imagine you have a tree that's giving off all this shade. You want your subject to stand towards the end of that shade and you're shooting into the darker part of the shade. You'll get the best light on your subject. You'll be the photographer standing in the sunny area shooting in towards that shade. And I'll show you an example of what the light looks like. Golden hour is the one exception to where your subjects can actually face the sun, and that's because the sun has set. We love golden hour, and it is what it sounds like. It gives everybody this golden glow. So it's that time of day where they can face the sun, get that golden glow, but they don't have to squint. As a photographer, that's one of our favorite times of day to take pictures. If you've ever had professional photos done, very likely your photographer has recommended either really early in the morning for that bright morning light or really late in the afternoon for that sunset golden hour, and that is why. So I'll quick show you an example of what that golden light looks like. It just adds a lot of vibrance. It really is the best time of day to take pictures. So if you find yourself, playing outside on your front porch that time of day and they're having fun playing dodgeball or playing basketball, that is a great time to pull out your camera or to pull out your cell phone and capture some photos. Useful tips for composition in your photos and to set your images apart to go from just a regular portrait to a professional portrait is to use depth in your images. There's a few different ways you can use depth. One easy way is to give your subject a background. So a lot of times we'll find a cute wall and we'll pose our kids right up against the wall. In this case, your children or your subject blends in with the background because they're even with it. Have them take a few steps off the wall, and that will make them be the foreground. They'll stick out more, and then the background will be a little bit blurry or fuzzy, and that's a great way to add depth. Another thing you can do is to add foreground. So an example of foreground would be having something in the front and have your subject set behind it. So just a little example, just because I have a handy dandy plant here. This is giving you depth or dimension to the video because this is in the foreground. Oftentimes in your camera, or not oftentimes, what it will do is blur this part out, which adds some fun depth. But foreground and background, two really easy ways to set your image apart and to make them more professional. A last way to add depth to your images is actually using portrait mode. Only the newer versions of phones have this, but what that portrait mode is it's actually giving you the opportunity to control aperture, or f-stop. And what aperture is, or f-stop is depth of field. So how much of that image is going to be in focus. So the lower the number, the less that will be in focus. I use this all the time. It's part of why I shoot with the lenses that I do, because they allow my aperture to go down really, really low. So this particular lens goes down to a 1.2. So just to give you an idea, I can take a picture of a person, and if they're slightly off, I can focus on an eyelash or one eye, and that will be in focus while this one will be blurry. So that low aperture of 1.2 is giving me a really small little window of focus. What that is beneficial for is, excuse me, it causes the background to be super blurry so your subject really pops. I'll show you an example here of a picture shot at a 1.2, a very low aperture with very little in focus. It depends on what you're going for, but if you're just taking a picture of 1 or 2 kids, that low aperture really will make them pop and make that picture look more professional. When you don't want to use an aperture is when you're maybe taking a picture of a large group or of a landscape, because you want all of the details to be in focus. Other things you can do with composition is to use your negative space well. So negative space is really just empty space in the photo. That can be empty wall space, that can be sky space, that can be ocean. It's just where there's not a lot of distractions or busyness in your photo. Here's an example of an image with a lot of negative space. It's more of a minimalist look. You can play around with negative space to really create beautiful images. Other very easy things you can do are to just change your angle. A lot of times as parents, when we take our phones, we're shooting down at our kids and all of our images are from this vantage point. Just a subtle difference, holding your phone straight like this. It makes your lines more even, it makes your horizon even, versus when we do this, everything's a little bit crooked because your phone is crooked. So how do you keep your phone like this if your subject is down there? Well, then you get down to their level. All right, well, hopefully you guys learned a few things about how to use your cell phone cameras better. I'm going to leave you with one last super important piece of advice. Back up your memories. And what I mean by that is make multiple copies. So don't just leave them on your cell phone. Back them up to your iCloud account. There's a number of resources online you can use. Dropbox.com is a great one to just store all of your memories so you have them backed up. Or you can always put them on an external hard drive. I use these little guys for all of my professional images, and I make multiple copies of every family photo session I've done, just to make sure that I have their memories safe until they're safely delivered into their hands. And I'll leave you today with that list of things that I've been sharing with you and talking through. I'll just throw those up on the screen. I'll also throw up a few samples for you to look through of different ways to use light, different ways to use leading lines and the rule of thirds, and backgrounds and foregrounds and lower apertures versus higher apertures. I'll throw all those up here so you can see the difference, and hopefully that will help you learn as well. Thanks so much for taking the time to tune in today. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend with Inheritance of Hope. Laugh a lot, make lots of memories, and capture all of it.